in your city of residence. First up is public comment. Anyone who wishes to, I think he has a question regarding the Centerra, and that will come up later in the meeting. Public comment. Anyone who wishes to speak to an item not on the regular agenda section of the agenda may address the council at this time. Any member of the public may request that an item on the consent agenda labeled as quasi-judicial be placed on the regular agenda for discussion and public comment or testimony. Public comment is intended to provide citizens with an opportunity to address council directly. Generally, council will not respond to public comment other than to seek clarification of the matter raised and defer such matter to the city manager for review and resolution. At this time, is there anybody in chambers who wishes to make public comment? You come on up to the microphone and give us your name and your city of residence.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council members. My name is Dr. Jim Danforth. I live at 3319 Berilla Court in Loveland, a 45-year resident, and a retired family physician. And I come to you with a concern tonight, and I'm asking you and encouraging you to oppose the McWhinney plan for developing the 26 wells.
Sir, that's going to be on our regular agenda. So for anything that's on our regular agenda, we ask that you hold comment until that item comes up.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize that was on the agenda.
It is 7.2, so we have one item before it.
Okay.
All right, thank you. Is there any additional public comment from inside chambers that are items not on the agenda? Okay.
Madam Mayor,
My understanding is it's about Centerra, and that will come up in due time. Okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead with public comment.
I believe that was John Fogel that said, Madam Mayor.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
in public comment.
Right, I understand, Madam Mayor. I think you may have cut the last gentleman off ahead of time. I thought I heard him wanting to talk about the McWhinney Oil and Gas production, not the McWhinney.
I apologize. Were you wanting to talk about oil and gas or the item that's on the agenda tonight?
No, oil and gas.
I apologize. Thank you, Councilor Fogel. I assumed you were doing the item that's on our agenda. Do you want to precede these people? Okay, come on, and I do apologize. Give us your name again.
I'm Dr. Jim Danforth, 45-year resident of Loveland, 3319 Berilla Court, retired family physician. And I'm coming here this evening to encourage you to oppose the McWhinney plan for the 26 oil and gas wells in Loveland, and I'd like to explain why I'm concerned about that. I offered to sit down with Mr. McWhinney on 2 occasions, and he was really not interested in sharing information, so I'm bringing it to you. We all know that those of us living along the Front Range are dealing with serious air pollution problems. We had an ozone day today as well. According to Larimer County statistics, 44% of the VOCs, which is what goes in to make ozone, come from oil and gas production, and I suspect it's probably from our neighbors to the east that we're getting to share that with. And this year alone, we've already had over 40 ozone alert days, where on days it's certainly concerning for some individuals in our community to be out and about. The 2017 CDPHE study...
Who's okay, thank you. Apologies.
The 2017 PHE study offered the possibility of 2,000-foot setbacks from wells that might be safe. But the study, though the state of the art at the time it was done, is deeply flawed. And I'm not going to go into a great deal on that, but I will state that the authors themselves, and I quote, our simulated total cancer risks from oil and gas operations are underestimated. They base their findings on models based on current EPA safe levels of air, but not really studying the bodies of human beings exposed to those toxins. And there are dozens of studies in the peer review literature that identify actual harm to children, pregnant women and their unborn babies, and seniors that substantiate the concerns about living near oil and gas. two studies this year in the T.H. Chan School of Public Health at Harvard identified, after looking at 15 million seniors, that those who live near and downwind of oil and gas development are at risk for early death. And those were supposedly at levels that EPA said are normal. So apparently they're not. We're just recognizing that the damage that's going on with the human body exposed to these toxins is internal. It's actually in the cells, in the cell organelles. And we're just beginning to see studies coming out identifying what that damage actually is. So to me, it says to invite the industrial process that's already creating our ozone problem into our community will only increase our bad air and very little benefit. In addition, if I could just take a minute, climate change is affecting our runoff, the amount of water we have available to us. The average fracked well takes about 4 million gallons of potable water to frack, and that's once. But over the lifetime of 26 wells, they can do that several times to the point where after 15 or 20 years, we might be spending 300 million gallons of potable water just to frack those wells. And at this point, we have a limited resource.
Mr. Danforth, I'm going to have to, we're out of time, but
I'm sorry.
I do
Okay.
appreciate you
Appreciate
being
that. Any
here.
questions I can, I
Do
guess
any
you don't answer
counselors
or
have
don't
any
ask questions
questions?
during this time.
I had a question for Dr. Danforth, if I could, and then also for our city manager on
Okay.
process. Okay. Dr. Danforth, thank you for being here this evening and for sharing this information. You mentioned about a 2017 PHE study, a certain number of feet setback. What was the number that you said?
2,000 feet, and that's,
And that's still insufficient.
well, that's what we're finding, that it doesn't guarantee safety at 2,000 feet. And the study really never said that it actually would. They just said this would be a good place to start, given the
Right.
information that we have.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. So my next question is for city manager, so I didn't know if someone else had a question for Dr. Danforth.
I don't think
Okay,
so.
Okay. So city manager, Dr. Danforth's request of us today was to oppose the McWhinneys who have now applied for, to have a well here in Loveland, as far as I understand from the.
County Road 3 is the one they're looking.
Yeah, and there is an application in the state COGCC system. So what does the process look like moving forward? And is there opportunity for council to oppose that in the event that, would it come before council? Or city attorney, if that's more appropriate.
I think I have Brett Limbaugh here in the audience, and I was going to offer to him. If not, I'll talk a little bit about it, but I thought I saw him earlier come in. The first step in the process is something that is being organized now by the McWhinney Group, and that is a public meeting of some sort, and that's being organized now. I have not seen the application become available to the city yet.
Okay.
Because it's not released until after this meeting is held, is my understanding. So that meeting is what then, after that's held, that kind of triggers the next step in the process. It's actually released to the public. So steps after that is then they need to come to us and make their application to us, and that triggers the time period depending on the location of the well. There's 2 locations.
Okay.
There's 2 different processes we've determined as staff that would be used, one for each location.
So when you say it comes to us, do you mean staff or do you mean city council?
Staff.
Well, oh, there he is. He's a slow walker today.
Oh.
I'll give you a hard time about that. She's asked about the 2 processes we have depending upon the location of the well and how the council's involved in that.
Okay, so there are 2 different tracks. One of the tracks allows for the administrative approval of an oil and gas facility by me, the director, and that's if they meet all the minimum state requirements plus additional requirements that are in our ordinances, including execution of a development agreement. The other process, it would go to a planning commission, and then that could be appealed to you, and that's only if they meet the minimum state requirements.
Okay, so if they don't meet ours, which when we created our requirements, when we set our requirements, what, in 2013, I think it was, this council did. At that point in time, this council did have requirements that were greater than the state requirements.
That's right.
Since then, the state requirements have matched or surpassed what our requirements are. Is that correct?
That's by and large correct, yeah.
Okay, so track 2 likely won't happen. It likely won't go before planning.
Probably not.
Okay, so there's a very good possibility that, I mean, without maybe a significant amount of noise from the community, that it won't come before council for us to even have the opportunity to oppose it, if that were the stance that council were to take. So, I know that we've been in communication in the past, and I'm sure that you've reached out to other council members as well, and I think furthering the conversation would probably be, a good thing to do for our community if that's the way that people would like to move.
Councilor McFall.
Yeah, just clarification from Brett, because you said something that I think concerns me based on what I've heard before. I thought our ordinance itself shifted to match the states. So how can it be behind the state if it shifts to match the state?
Well, this is a very different state legislature than when we originally wrote the ordinance. And so our kind of enhanced process was greater than what the state was requesting. That has changed now that a new state legislature has gone in and raised the bar on the rules and requirements
But
under their
our ordinance
process.
should match the state no matter which way, am I correct?
In both cases, they have to meet the minimum state requirements.
Okay, so once state gets everything set as far as shifting the bar, we actually have to do nothing because our ordinance says it will match the state, correct?
It will. If they use the enhanced process, there's some additional ordinance requirements that are specific to our code that they have to meet as well.
And that's fine in and of itself, but the statement that we're behind the state in itself is not completely genuine.
Yeah, as long as you have to meet the minimum state standard, then, yeah, certainly in both cases,
Okay.
that's the minimum requirement.
All right, Councilor Ball.
Brett, why are the two different McWhinney tracks treated differently?
Well, if it's proximate to, for example, a wetland or some other item that's listed in our setback standards, they have to go through a public process. If it's not, then they can go through an administrative process.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
No.
Yes, she can. Oh, I didn't see your light on. I didn't see your light, Dana. Councilor Foley.
I'm like, wait a minute. I still get to ask my first round. The first track is basically if you've met and you've hit all the dots, everything's met, it goes through. The only reason for the second track would be if there's a variance given, and then it has to come through the planning.
That's correct.
Thank you.
That's not exactly how I understood what you said. So I think it'd be interesting to review the resolution. I imagine this was a resolution, not an ordinance. Is that right? Or was this an ordinance?
It's
that
part
this was
of our
passed?
code.
It's part of our code, how this is structured?
Municipal code.
Okay, so I'll have to look into that specifically. But the way that what you said to me registered for me was that basically track 1 is if you surpass the state's requirements.
Yes.
Okay, and if at this point in time, if we're only meeting state requirements, then everyone would have to go to track 2, right? Because no one's surpassing them.
Yeah, in this case, I think the one facility they're planning on the east can probably go through an administrative hearing process.
Are they surpassing state requirements?
That I can't tell you because I have to sit in judgment over that
Okay.
application, and so that's going to be analyzed by our contract attorney and then also our planning staff, and then they'll make a recommendation to me.
Okay, but potentially the second application would need to go through planning and then potentially be referred to us.
I believe that one will.
Okay. Is there a way, thank you, Brett. City Manager, is there a way to keep our public up to date on where things are in the process, to have a communication? Would you like it to go through as council members instead of through some sort of public process? Because, this is just an application. What would you like to do?
So thank you for the question, Councilor. I think your question is, how do we intend on keeping the public informed? We've created a website already.
Okay,
That no information has been posted that's releasable yet.
okay,
When it is, we will immediately post on our website which is the loveloveland.gov/oil and gas. That website will be activated to provide the application immediately to the public so they can see it as we're seeing it.
Okay.
And then from there, we will be discussing the process and there's a section there for us to provide updates and so forth about where we are in that process more specifically. So that's how we plan to keep the community informed of this process as it goes along.
So in the event that it goes to Planning Commission, or in the event there's public meeting or whatever, that will be notified very early on the website with enough notice for people to attend.
That's correct.
Okay.
We expect if it's administrative process, of course, that's one thing. If it's in the Planning Commission, that's, of course, out in the public, and we will let that website know when that Planning Commission date is and so forth.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Danforth. I appreciate you bringing this forward. Thank you, Brett, and thank you, City Manager.
Councilor Foley, do you have more?
Is it fair to ask a
So
question?
just
at this
for
point?
clarification,
Okay.
May I ask?
either track, the first track or the second track, they have to be approved at the state level before it ever even gets to our level, correct?
Yeah, that's what we're requiring in both cases because it doesn't make any sense for us to do any type of review unless it's past the state requirements.
Thank you.
Dr. Danforth, did you have a
I
clarifying?
think that's my question, is where does the COGCC come in? And I presume that's what Councilman Foley was asking about.
Did you get your answer? Or?
They come in at the front end.
Yeah. Yes, we want to get their concurrence first, that it's met all the state requirements before we do any more review.
Thank you.
And Dr. Danforth, I believe California just changed its regs, so you have to be, I think, 3,200 feet from homes. Yeah. All right,
Thank you for the
you.
opportunity to speak with you this evening.
Okay,
Mayor, I have a question, please.
on public comment?
Yes,
Okay, please go ahead.
I need some clarification. From Brett, my understanding is that the applicant has to meet or exceed the state regulations. And what you just said is that if they meet it, that's not adequate. Can you explain that? Why isn't meeting the state standards adequate for an administrative review?
Okay, well, in both instances, Councilman Olson, they have to meet the minimum state requirements. The first track, we have additional requirements that they also have to follow. And if they do that, including signing this development agreement with the city, stating that they will go above and beyond what the state requirements are, that can be approved at the administrative level. However, if they're just going to meet the bare bones requirements of the state requirements, then it has to go through public hearing process.
Okay, but as long as they meet the state requirements and they meet the city requirements, then it can go through an administrative hearing. Is that correct?
It can, yes.
Thank you.
All right, I don't see any other questions. Thank you, Brett.
You're welcome.
Do we have additional public comment from chambers? Yeah.
Hi, my name's Olivia Lowe, Ward 2. I would like to know exactly what the public, the people that actually live in Loveland, can do to stop the fracking. What can the public do? You're going to have a public meeting where the public gets to speak. So what exactly can the public do to stop the fracking? Don't everybody raise your hands at once?
My layperson would be, you want to contact COGCC. There will be hearings, so I believe the hearings are still on Zoom versus in person. You have a lot of organizations around this area that would probably be supportive, and I anticipate they will be putting a lot of information out about what to do.
So it seems to me a lot of what the city does is entirely duplicitous. The fracking is quite close to Boyd Lake. What about the High Plains Environmental Center? What about the wetlands? We stand up here and give proclamations to the Parks Department for putting brand new bike paths through the city that are so great, and the recreational opportunities here are so wonderful. And then we agree to fracking? What? How does that work exactly? How are we protecting our wetlands exactly? How are we protecting our residents exactly? It's just a dog and pony show to say that the public is invited to this public hearing to what? Learn about something we already all know about? Climate change is no joke. Rivers are drying up, not just in Colorado, all across the country, all across the world. And it's not going to get any better. The Colorado River is already over-allocated since the 1918, 1917, way over-allocated. So where do you guys think all this water is going to come from? Fogel's really proud of himself for saying we have water until 2035. That's tomorrow. That's tomorrow. And by the time the McWhinneys put this through and everything else they want to put through and don't have to give any money back, whatever, by the time all these bills come due, you'll be dead, you'll be dead, you'll be dead, you'll be dead. Is this the legacy that you're leaving this town? That we have to then carry the burden of your bad decisions? It's a bunch of bullshit and you guys know it. This is terrible. Think about the residents and not your wallets for a change. Thank you.
Thank you, Olivia. Do we have additional public comment from inside chambers?
Good evening, David Goldberg, Ward 1. First of all, amen to Unidad and the Constitution. The cell tower being built at the church on Taft is an absolute behemoth. It's 25 feet wide and 55 feet high. And Glenda is going to show you a picture of that. If you haven't seen it, you should. Probably most of you have already. The next picture she'll show you after you all see that is from the Benson Sculpture Park. Fortunately or unfortunately, there is not much of a view from the sculpture park of the tower, so that's good. But from Aspen Avenue and the bathroom, you can see a small over here. There is a view of the tower there, which is not very nice. So as you can see, that it's kind of hideous. My question to council, and this is aimed at the planning department as well, is how was this tower approved in the first place? I want to read you a few things directly from the Loveland Wireless Ordinance, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Starting with design criteria, every WCF wireless communication facility outside of the right-of-way shall comply with the following design criteria. This is from section 14.40.010, by the way. Architectural compatibility. The WCF shall be architecturally compatible with the surrounding buildings and land uses in the same zone or otherwise integrated through location and design to blend in with the existing characteristics of the subject property to the extent possible. Such WCF will be considered architecturally and visually compatible if they are camouflaged to disguise the WCF. Color, towers, and antennas shall be of a color that generally matches the building, surroundings, or background and minimizes that visibility unless a different color is required by the FCC or FAA. Muted colors, earth tones, and subdued colors shall be used wherever possible. I don't have much time. Now I want to talk about setbacks. Same ordinance, residential zones, towers shall be set back from all property lines a distance equal to 300% of tower height, provided, however, that a lesser setback may be permitted if the director determines that, I'm going to paraphrase, basically that service can't be provided. However, no antenna, array, or support structure shall be erected or maintained closer to any street that the minimum setback for the zone in which it is located. The minimum setback is 300% of tower height. That would be 165 feet. We just measured it tonight. It's like 60 feet away from Taft Avenue. That just doesn't work. So how in the heck was this thing approved?
All right, thank you, Mr. Goldberg. Brett, are you able to answer some of those questions? There were questions about colors and size and setbacks.
Okay, so this tower went through a planning commission review. The planning commission was acting as the board of adjustment, and so they received a height variance, And with the approval, there was a condition on the type of materials that had to be used on the tower. What you see on that drawing is incorrect. Their manufacturers had made a mistake, and we stopped the work on this tower, and they will have to go back and retrofit this facility. It is supposed to be the same color and style of brick that's on the church. And so this red tower that you see there will not be the ultimate result. But it is going to take them time to, no doubt, manufacture the panels to look like dimensioned brick at the proper color, and then those will be affixed to the tower.
What about the height and the setback? It sounds like it's too tall for the distance away from Taft Avenue or the sidewalk.
Yeah, and that's why I said this went through our planning commission, and they reviewed all the setbacks and the heights. So what you see there is what they approved as far as the dimension.
Okay, all right. Thank you, David, for bringing it forward. Thank you, Glenda. All right, Glenda?
Question about that?
Madam Mayor,
Oh, sorry. All right, who was first?
please.
Councilor McFall.
Brett, I appreciate what you said, and I was aware. I actually had an opportunity to talk to Chairman to find out what was going on with this. And Dave, it's always good getting a phone call from you and being able to discuss this. The question I have, just for clarification, how did we get here? How do we get with this? Because I drive by it every day. I know it's not far from the mayor.
I can see it from my backyard.
How did we get here without somebody saying, "Oh my God"?
Yeah, I mean, the planning commission is a public hearing, and so.
Well, I'm fine with planning commission. I'm just, how did we get here with a red tower without somebody saying you're so far off of what you're supposed to do?
Yeah, we actually have planning technicians that caught this when they were in the process of putting the panels on, and so we told them we just basically stopped work on it.
It looks like the panels are on, though.
Yeah, well,
I guess that's what I'm asking.
Yeah.
Do we have no check and balances or doing this?
They're going to have to go back and meet the conditions of approval, so those panels will have to come off, and they'll have to match the church materials.
I'm there, but how do we stop from getting here again with a different project? I guess that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, we try to do our best to go out and watch these things as they're being constructed, and in this case we did catch it, but it's unfortunate that those panels were the ones that were manufactured and installed, because they'll all have to come down.
All right. Councilor Ball?
So essentially, we have our planning commission to thank or not thank for allowing the adjustments on the setbacks.
Yes, sir.
They voted on this, and it was not appealed, right?
No, it was not appealed.
Okay. Well, I also find offensive the cross. Having worshiped in that sanctuary for several years, they've obviously sold themselves out to the almighty dollar, and I want to make sure that no cross goes up on that. I mean, the materials and the color, but no cross. That shouldn't be allowed.
Okay, yeah, we can certainly speak to them about that, but I think what was presented to the planning commission had a cross at least on 2 of the elevations, as I recall.
Cross made of stone?
Brought up in your meeting. All right, Councilor Sampson?
Okay, so 2 questions, Brett, if you don't mind. So first of all, why haven't they had to remove the panels? If they weren't approved and they're up there and you caught it, why haven't they had to remove them?
Well, again, we can have that discussion with the applicants too. I'm not sure if there's a technical reason they still have to be up there or not, but we can have that discussion with them, and if they can remove those, that's probably the best thing to do.
Okay, and then there's a cross incorporated into the rocks?
There is in the original elevations that they presented to the planning commission, there is a cross on the elevation.
Okay. Okay, so thank you for that. I, of course, would support them removing the panels. So it's like having an advertisement up there, right? If it's illegal, you should probably take it down.
Yeah.
But my other question is actually about what David brought forward about these setbacks and everything. And yet, we have one of these towers on top of the art space building. How did that get approved with the setbacks? Did that go on there before we approved setbacks?
No, actually, the ones that are mounted on building, it's considered a co-location. So it's, as long as the building itself meets all the height requirements and so forth. These antennas can be mounted to the exterior of the building elevations, and to the greatest extent possible, we try to camouflage those with a similar paint color or some other treatment that can conceal the antennas.
Okay. So when we're installing them individually on their own as a tower by
Yeah.
themselves, we have to have setbacks. But we also have this code where you can co-locate with a tower and share a living space with it, basically.
Yeah, and this is on most buildings. You'll notice that and sometimes you can see them, and sometimes you can't. But usually you'll see at the top of the crease of the building that you'll have these metal panels mounted up there. Those are all cell tower antennas.
Okay. Thank you for that. City Manager, I know that we reviewed these priorities recently, and this one, I think, maybe fell a couple of spots on the list, but it didn't fall off the list, and it's not near the bottom, I don't believe. Do we have this? I haven't reviewed our rolling calendar. Do we have this coming before us, the 5G cell tower rule of 4?
Thank you for your question. Just last week, on the 23rd, I received guidance from council. That's pretty final guidance. This one was up on the list enough so that we're working to schedule it now. It has to go through 3 different boards and commissions first.
Okay.
After staff starts with it and works on it, then it goes to 3 boards and commissions, then it'll come to you because you'll ask us, did we go to the boards and commissions to talk about it? And we'll say,
Right.
yes, we did.
Okay.
That process took 9 months last time.
Okay.
So I'm
And-
not saying that's how long it'll take this time, but we just have to get that all scheduled out.
Okay. Will Mr. Goldberg, David, be kept abreast of the process of where it's going through what commissions? I know he's very good about communicating with us, which I appreciate. So is that something that you're able to communicate with him as well?
Yeah, I'm communicating with him too also.
Excellent. Okay.
So-
Thank you, David. Nicely done. All right. Thank you, Steve.
Councilor Foley?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to question a statement by Councilor Ball on getting rid of a cross when one of the ordinance is to blend in and be part of the surrounding area. And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is on a church, correct?
It's on a church property, yes, that's right.
Okay, and so having a cross on a church property would be appropriate for camouflage. Would you agree with that general statement?
I think that's what the applicant's intent was.
And we have crosses on steeples and towers throughout this city, correct?
Yes, we do.
Okay, and then there's also a thing of property rights, and there's also a thing of the First Amendment of freedom of speech for those people as well. So I would be cautious to limit someone of what they can or can't do on advertisement of their business and property. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Ball?
My question is the height. It's the height. Obviously, it's a church. Is the height permissible for that cross?
Yeah, and this antenna did get that variance approval, and as part of that, they had to show the elevations, and on those elevations there were crosses.
All right, thank you. Thank you again, Brett. Thank you, David. Linda?
I'm Glenda Seeley. I live 150 feet from that thing. In addition to just the site of it, I would like to thank Doctor for pointing out that this affects humans at the cellular level. It blocks calcium. We are doing cell towers in neighborhoods. This is like the tobacco industry. We're destroying ourselves. The EMFs will eventually make people sick. Not only is it affecting our property values, who wants to live by that? I appreciate that planning has caused a pause in construction, but no amount of color changes is going to remove the tower and what it's doing to our neighborhood. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Glenda. Is there anyone else in the chambers that wishes to speak at public comment? All right, we'll go over for...
Madam Mayor?
Oh, yes.
You need to watch the hand.
I don't see you.
You got to have your picture on,
I
John, to
don't
get your
see
hand
you.
to show, because you don't even have a box. There you go.
Okay, go ahead, Counselor Fogel.
Okay, just for heads up, your hand shows whether you're turned on camera or not.
No, it doesn't.
Not anymore.
Okay. Well, anyway, what I would like to do is ask Manager Adams for a little clarification on something.
Go ahead.
Manager Adams, we're going to have Ken Feldman involved at all these levels when we present. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, Counselor, I didn't hear your question.
At each of these upcoming meetings where we're going to discuss cell towers and things like that, I think we need to have a resident expert from the state and a nationally recognized expert involved in all those meetings. So I assume you're making arrangements with Ken Feldman to attend?
We are working at the staff level now to set up a group of staff and third party that will be used for this process.
Okay. One of the things that I understand in my conversations with Ken and with others is that the actual emissions from a handheld cell phone, which we unfortunately all hold right up to our heads, is actually a couple to 3 times greater than the emissions from these towers at 100 feet. This is all just hearsay that I'm hearing. I would like to get Ken's take on that. I think you'll find that he will give you some direction to papers and things that are on those, that's on that topic. Because, trying to change the world and move cell towers around when we're all walking around with a cell phone in our hand that emits more radiation, I think is something we need to at least be cognizant of during our conversations. So I look forward to hearing from Ken and his group. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right. Chad, I believe you're handling our phone in public comment. Do we have any phone in public comment?
Thank you, Mayor Marsh. Users, if you'd like to speak during public comment, please choose the raise your hand feature. Per council's policy, you must have your video on during public comment. As a moderator calls on the user's name, please accept a pop-up request on your screen to become a panelist. The meeting will automatically rejoin you as a panelist, and you may turn on your video, then begin your public comment. You must be ready to accept a pop-up window request from the moderator when called on. Madam Mayor, I do not have any users with their hands raised.
All right, thank you. We'll close public comment and move on to our consent agenda.